Today, we're diving into a story that's been unfolding for decades in Ghana. It's a story about power, about promises, and about betrayal. It's a story that has literally poisoned the country's rivers, destroyed its farms, and called into question the integrity of its leaders, one after another.
So let me just ask you this. What do you call a country that sees a disaster happening in slow motion, knows exactly what the problem is, has all the power to stop it, makes all the right speeches, and then, every single time, just lets it happen?
You call it Ghana. And that problem is illegal small-scale mining, or as it's known there, Galamsey. Now, I want to be really clear about something. This isn't about the small-time miners trying to survive. Our focus here is on the people at the very top. The presidents, the ministers, the officials, who swore they would fix this and then didn't. To really get what's going on, you have to understand that this isn't some new crisis. It's a pattern, a predictable, almost scripted cycle of failure that just repeats itself over and over again. And here is that script. It's a 5-step playbook of failure. First, a leader stands up and makes this huge, passionate promise to end Galamsey for good. Then, they launch some big operation with a tough-sounding name. Step 3, you get the photo ops. A few small-scale miners get arrested for the cameras. But step 4, behind the scenes, the real money, the big players, they're quietly allowed to keep going. And the final step, the leader leaves office, and the problem is even worse than when they started. And look, this isn't a partisan thing. As you can see, this exact cycle has played out across every single administration of Ghana's Fourth Republic, from Rawlings to Kufuor, Atamils to Mahama, and right up to akuffo-addo. It's a systemic problem, not a political one. Okay, so let's get into what is maybe the most glaring, just mind-bending contradiction in this entire story. This is where the promises run headfirst into the cold, hard data. And what that data shows is, well, it's staggering. You just have to hear this quote. When President Akuffo-Addo came into office, he didn't just talk tough on Galamsey, he basically declared war. He famously said he was prepared to put his entire presidency on the line to stop it. I mean, you can't get more committed than that, right? It was the boldest promise any leader had ever made on the issue. But then you look at the numbers, and they tell a completely different story. So, in the 20 years under Rawlings and Kufuor, only 40 mining licenses were given out. Okay, under Mills and Mahama, that number went up a bit, to 59. But under the administration that put its presidency on the line to fight Galamsey, a jaw-dropping 2,151 licenses were issued. Let me just put that in perspective for you. That is a more than 3,000% increase. The very president who declared war on Galamsey oversaw this single biggest expansion of mining licenses in the country's history. Calling it a paradox feels like a massive understatement. So, you have to be asking yourself, how on earth could that happen? How can what's being said publicly be so completely different from what's actually being done? Well, a bombshell report from a top government insider offered a very, very explosive explanation. The whole fight was being sabotaged from the inside. And this is it, the Frimpong Boateng report. In March 2021, the man who was handpicked by the president himself to lead this fight, Professor Frimpong Boateng, he handed this 36-page report directly to the presidency. This wasn't some leak from a disgruntled employee. This was the official report from the chairman of the committee in charge. And inside this report, he named names. He alleged that some of the most powerful people in the country, were talking presidential staffers, directors at the presidency, members of parliament, and other ruling party bigwigs. He alleged they weren't just failing to stop Galamsey, he claimed they were actively involved in it, or protecting the people who were. He was essentially telling the president, the call is coming from inside the house. So what happened after these explosive allegations came out? What was the official response? Well, the presidency basically brushed it off, calling it a bunch of personal grievances. The attorney general looked at it and said there wasn't enough to prosecute anyone. And then, in the final unbelievable twist, the whistleblower, Professor Frimpong Boateng himself, was actually sued for defamation by one of the very officials he named in his report. So while all this political drama was playing out in the capital, what was the actual cost on the ground? For the country? For the people of Ghana? What was the real-world price of all these broken promises? Well, let's start with the money. In just 1 year, 2016, it's estimated that $2.3 billion worth of gold was smuggled out of Ghana through illegal mining. That's billions of dollars, untaxed, unregulated, and just gone. And remember, that's just 1 year.
But the real cost goes so much deeper than just lost gold. By 2024, a staggering 60% of Ghana's water sources were reportedly polluted by these mining activities. Rich cocoa farms, the backbone of the entire agricultural economy, were just dug up and destroyed. And here's the ultimate irony. When cocoa prices hit a record high in 2024, Ghana couldn't fully cash in because so much of its precious farmland had been ruined by Galamsey. So, all of this brings us to right now. After this long, depressing history of failure, the biggest question of all is, can this destructive cycle finally be broken?
A new government has taken over, and to be fair, they have made some early moves. They're talking about new regulations, digitizing licenses, things that sound good. But, and it's a huge but, Ghana has heard all of this before. They've seen the promising starts, and they have been let down every single time.
And this right here is the core of it. This is the whole problem in a nutshell. The reason Galamsey is so hard to stop isn't because of a lack of soldiers or a lack of laws. It's because Galamsey is incredibly profitable. And the very people it's most profitable for are the exact same people who have the power to shut it down. And so we're left with this one final question. Is Ghana's problem really about finding the right law or the right strategy? Or is it something far more simple and far more troubling? Is it just a catastrophic failure of will from leaders who have no interest in turning off a tap that they and their friends are secretly drinking from? That is the question that hangs over Ghana today.